Good morning. Good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome all of our members, strategic partners, and guests who are joining us here today. I'm Jill Nussbaum. I serve on the programming committee for FBI Twin Cities, and we are delighted that we have 4 of our strategic partners joining us this morning to present topics that I think you'll find fairly relevant and timely. We're going to kick it off first thing this morning with the SALO team. We've got a panel presentation that'll be moderated by looming. And then following this session, we will have the remaining 3 sessions at the top of the hour, 9, 10, and 11, separated by short breaks in between. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the floor over to Elaine.
All right, thank you, Jill. Can you guys hear me okay? You got a mic? Okay. Good morning, welcome, and thank you all for being here today. My name is Dee Supik, and I am a Business Development Director with SALO, a Korn Ferry company supporting our interim solutions finance and accounting side of the business here at SALO. So welcome to all of you to our beautiful office this morning. The topic for today is tips for successful recruitment and retention 2023. Obviously for us at SALO, a talent firm, very relevant topics for us, but really with all the economic uncertainties and ever-changing market conditions, relevant topics for really anyone in this room and any organization. So without further ado, I would love for you to get to know our esteemed panelists here. Dave, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, thank you. Esteemed, I'd like to now just tripped up. I've never been called esteemed before, but thank you. So I'm Dave Rust, I'm the CFO here at SALO. I've been here just over 7 years. A lot of change, obviously. Most recently, we sold to Korn Ferry, so we are now SALO, a Korn Ferry company as of February 1st. Lots of opportunity with that. Prior to SALO, I worked for 11 years in the airlines with Northwest and then Delta, and then kind of prior to that was a lot of time within the financial services industry. I think we're supposed to do a fun fact. Fun fact is I have 3 boys, two of them are a set of twins. At SALO, we have lots of sets of twins, as people who were on the tour saw. We even have rooms that are the twins' room, so if you are looking to build or start a family, be careful and don't drink the water. Unless you want twins. Twins are great, actually, so maybe do drink some water. But I'll turn that over to Claire. There you go.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Claire Giancola-Belmars, and I'm a SALO consultant currently, and in 21 I made the pivot from corporate HR after several years in HR, a variety of different areas, but my primary specialty is HR operations and talent acquisition. So I have really focused my career on hiring and developing the best talent in organizations. And I do some side hustles. I'm kind of a portfolio person, but I'm doing a full-time talent leader role through SALO currently, and I also do executive coaching and transitional coaching right now. Fun fact about me, I was thinking about this one, like, what's even interesting? So I work with a variety of nonprofits, volunteer. One of the reasons I took a pivot in 21, I wanted to be a little bit more purposeful and give back in different ways, and not be saddled by 80-hour work weeks. So I'll just throw that out there. One of the organizations that I work with, we collect new and gently used Hawaiian shirts, and we send those to military personnel in hot zones overseas, and we are just surpassing 50,000 shirts, and we do gift boxes, so we provide a little piece of home and party favors and all of those kind of things, and brings a bit of joy for those that are deployed for 12 to 18 months. So I've been doing that since about 2015.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm fighting a cold here. I just got it yesterday, so I apologize. My name's John Cermak. Is that better?
Louder.
Louder. I'm trying. That's not usually my problem either at all. So, good morning. My name is John Cermak. I am the Director of Talent Acquisition for internal and for consultant positions within SALO across our accounting, finance, and HR pyramids. I also lead a people support team, and their responsibility is to assure that any of the process or technology that's involved in our candidate experience process is running smoothly on a regular basis, among about 800 million other things that they do on a daily basis, which is great. I've been here just over 5 years. Prior to this, I was an HR professional at Target Corporation for many years, where Claire and I crossed paths. Buffalo Wild Wings, Sleep Number. So I've been in large corporate HR my whole career. This has been my first stint into small, which has been awesome. As Dave mentioned, we've been acquired, so we're having fun working through all of the changes and the integration with Korn Ferry, which has been super exciting too. So I'm happy to be here and share a bit about talent, which is my favorite topic, so I can talk forever.
Perfect. And one quick housekeeping item. We'll save some time at the end for questions, but if you guys have any imminent questions, feel free to throw your hand up. All right, let's get started with their first topic, the current workforce landscape. So Claire, let's start with you. Being in your talent acquisition role, remote and hybrid work, still a hot topic. What's your latest thoughts on how companies are or should be approaching this?
What a hotbed topic right now, right? A lot of organizations are really struggling with this coming out of the pandemic. Personally, I've always felt find the best talent and work with them wherever you can find them, and has big impact on your relocation budgets and things like that. Clearly, there's organizations that their talent can't work remotely or even in a hybrid schedule. They need to be in person, manufacturing, healthcare. And they are definitely struggling because the gift of the pandemic, if you will, was that organizations realized that work could be done and productivity could increase during that time. And the other gift was many people really dug deep to decide what they wanted to do. And although they may work in manufacturing, healthcare, and those types of situations, they need more flexibility now, more than ever. And that really popped. So what we're seeing from organizations is the struggle of what is the work and what is the balance? What can we really afford? And the impact on recruiting, and I'm sure that you're seeing this, is especially for professional level talent. They want more flexibility, they want hybrid, and I think the Twin Cities in particular, we're very much brick and mortar headquarters type organizations here. We have great talent. The struggle of organizational leadership wanting people to come back into the office and having a hard time justifying that. So what I would say about approaching it is rather than mandating things, really listen to your employees and see what they're looking for and see what you can do. Flex schedules, do job shares. If the work doesn't have to be done in an 8 to 5 or a 9 to 6 type role, how can you meet their needs and balance that with the organization as well? If you've heard of things like results-oriented work environments, which is a different way of thinking about hybrid or flex work, focus on the results that people produce and not how much time they have their butt in chair. And I think that is truly a real struggle for individuals, for companies.
And just my 2 cents, being in my seat, oftentimes in the interim solution space, we present candidates who are maybe one with the right skill set, but then one with the right location, and you see that the right location will win. So it's definitely a very unique challenge that we're seeing in today's environment. All right, my next question. So in talking about the uncertainties in the economy and market, efforts like employer marketing, benefits and compensation, and culture programs are often projects or budgets that get cut. And here at SALO, we operate as a people-first company, which a lot of companies are starting to kind of transition into that type of environment. How should companies think about recruitment and retention differently to be truly a people-first company while also recognizing and navigating the complexities of a tough market? John, let's start with you.
Yeah, for sure. This is another one of those very poignant discussions, especially now. But what I would say, a couple of things. You mentioned mandating. I guess my professional opinion on that is that I wouldn't do it because I feel like right now, after the pandemic, and we just talked about this before, like so much perspective has changed among people and what's important to them. So for me, when I thought about this, first of all, SALO is very much a people-first organization, and as you think about the organizations that you work for, I would challenge you to think internally, is your organization that you work for truly a people-first organization? And I think it's important for us to think about that as employees of a company. The concept of loyalty to an organization, unfortunately, in my opinion, isn't what it used to be. I think that it's more about loyalty to learning and your own personal journey than it is to the organization that you work for, which is just the reality that we live in. So with all that being said, people first to me is kind of one of the secrets to the SALO success story, which we have very low turnover and people really enjoy and want to be here, and I think it makes a difference in how we recruit. Because when we recruit, we don't post like our positions online. Like that's not what we do. We depend on referrals and relationships and building the connections and being with people and talking to them over the course of sometimes many years to explain why this is a magical, awesome place to work and how making work meaningful for people is important to us. So I think those are really important things. I would say there's a quote that I like too, that Peter Drucker, who was a big business guru, said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." So anybody that tells you that culture is like somewhere down on the totem pole in terms of what's important in your organization at your leadership meetings, if it's not at the top of that list, I'd say there's probably some rearranging that should be done within your organization, especially today. So for us here, it means lots of different things. I mean, one example, and then I'll hand it off to Dave, in terms of recruiting and retention is how we partner with our marketing team. So I would encourage anyone in this room as you think about how you're bringing people into the organization. And I'd argue we're all recruiters. Everyone in this room is responsible for bringing talent into their organizations, just like the three of us are responsible for that as well. I would just really think about how does your organization partner with your marketing team? We have been side by side. I know Hannah Erdman set up a lot of this today. She's one of our marketing managers. She's amazing, and she's done some really good work around our employee value proposition. So when we go to market and when we're talking to people about SALO, a lot of the work has already been done by our marketing team, and they make such, it's easy work because this is a great place. But if you don't have that strategic partnership in the world of recruiting and bringing talent into your organization, I think that's a miss, and it's something that really helps us stay people first. Oops, you're in.
I think I'm going to actually pass it
Oh,
to
and
Claire.
I'm going to interrupt 1 second. This is a big, beautiful room, and these microphones are sort of built out. Types of microphones that you have to, one, speak loud and speak into. Thank you. You don't want to miss a word. Thank you.
We have a question.
Can I ask a question? You mentioned about culture and remote work. How is sales delivering to kind of simulate that culture to new employees in a remote environment? Because it seems like that's a real challenge right now.
It is a real challenge. So hopefully you guys can hear me a little bit better here. Awesome question. It's on my list of things to talk about here. I would say it remains a challenge for us. We have a ton of remote folks working for us right now. My team, for example, I have folks just about in every reach of the country right now. I guess my answer would be a couple of things. I mean, it sounds really simple, but I have, let's say out of my folks on my team, I have, let's say 4 that are remote. Not a day goes by where I'm not in front of a screen with that individual at least 3 or 4 times a day. And it's not all about, hey, tell me about where we're at with that particular result that we need to have done by 4 o'clock today. It's really, honestly, how's your daughter? I know she got into that playground accident yesterday, and I'm hoping she's okay. It's super simple stuff. Like, I know my people really, really well. So for me, to keep the feeling of being part of something bigger than yourself when you're on an island in Austin, Texas, which is an example that's part of my team. How do you, I mean, we do virtual events, we do virtual team events where we all spend time together virtually. It's not the same thing, I know, but it is what it is. When we can fly people up for larger events, we do that. So it's I would say a nut we haven't completely cracked, but it's a focus for us for sure.
Can I take up that question?
Please.
So the culture is important, but in the finance world, the concern I've had over 3 years, the people that you've recruited out of college, to me, it's that training piece of it and their learning curve. Can you just speak maybe any of you just from
Has that been successful, or is it a real concern that the people coming from college to learn who are remote are not getting the experience that many of us have in our career?
I'll let maybe we don't recruit a ton of folks out of college, but I'll let Dave. I know Claire does.
Yeah, I mean, I can, from a finance perspective here, not a ton of recruiting, but in general recruiting, right? I mean, I think what you see now and what you saw, like kind of as we got into the pandemic, right, was the companies that had really well-defined tasks and had well-defined roles and had good technology, those were the companies that tended to work the best, right? And so we've continued to try to work on that. But I think it goes back to a lot of what John was saying, is just creating a lot of touch points, right? Not everybody is in person anymore like they used to be. So it's just being really intentional about that and realizing that it's a challenge, right? And then I think one of the things we've tried to do is have great space. While a lot of people are virtual, try to have great physical space and try to encourage people to come in. And and we tell people, because I mean, since the pandemic started, we've probably more than doubled at Salo in general, so beyond just finance. And you're more productive, or you can be more productive remotely, et cetera, but you got to remind the people who are not new that coming into the office isn't necessarily about them, it's about training new people, because there's those new people, you learn by all that kind of just the bump-ins and all those types of things. So just trying to encourage collaboration as much as possible and trying to get people together as much as possible.
I feel like I could have a whole session on this one, so I'll try to keep my comments short. From internal within organizations, and I'll take it in a couple different ways. So with the economy the way it is, and budgets being tight, and focus on culture and retention, and I'll dovetail into your question here, the cost of recruitment outweighs the cost of retention. And I don't think enough organizations focus on that, because we're just going to hire, or we're going to stop hiring, and then we don't focus on retention. Retention comes in many ways: collaboration, listening, being with people. If you've heard of Gemba, being where the work gets done, things like that. Very, very important. One of the things I've seen in organizations over my years, and is absolutely detrimental to culture, is when you have to do layoffs. And the ripple effect of a layoff, right? And usually that's to meet a 10K or a quarterly earnings statement or something like that. And as finance individuals, I implore you to get in the weeds with your HR partners and figure out the cost of recruitment, the true cost of recruitment and productivity, and not having engaged teams, and what that will do all around for your organization. With new college grads, interns, conversion rates, things like that, as well as any new hire you bring in your organization. The first few weeks and first few months of their onboarding will set the tone for how long they're going to stay with your organization. There are so many statistics out there and programs. HBR has a really great article on this from a couple of years ago, that the decision for many people, I want to say the number was about 66% of people, to stay with your organization is set within that first week, and how they were onboarded. And it goes beyond, did they have equipment and do they know their benefits? It's who did they meet, what did they learn about the company, who can they connect with. If they don't have a phone, that's a big deal, right? They may not use it as much anymore, but they have Jabber and these other tools. For new college grads in particular, their way of communicating is very different than when I started working, right? You have to learn it and be in the trenches with them. If they want an app, if they want Slack, if they want to be on Teams, if your leaders aren't comfortable with that, you need to get them comfortable really quick, because you're going to lose people. And I would throw out the window, we've done it this way, I'm comfortable doing it. Get uncomfortable, get messy in the middle, connect with your people. From an onboarding perspective, align them with a peer buddy, someone who's been there. That helps for the retention, because the peer buddy now has more responsibility. Have virtual lunch and learns with your leadership team once a month 45 minutes. Have a virtual lunch and learn. Invite your new hires. Every leader in the organization C-suite should be doing this, having a lunch and learn with their new hires. And make it very important for your managers to allow those employees to participate. Because they'll say, oh, can't afford them to be away from their desk for an hour. Can you afford to let that job go vacant for 6 months? What's the cost?
I'm so glad you mentioned cost, because that's a perfect lead into my next question for our finance guy here, Dave. So we all know it's more cost effective to keep employees than to hire new ones, as Claire mentioned. There are a lot of tactics companies can focus on to keep employees engaged, like recognition, upskilling, development opportunities. Dave, how do you recommend prioritizing these?
So I think there's not one thing, right? So it is a prioritization and figuring out, what's right for your organization. Here, I think the things that we've really focused on are one on a kind of AI, right? People talk about that. AI but it's really broader than that. It's kind of productivity and technology. So that's one I'll come back to. 2 is around benefits, right? And having a competitive benefits plan. And then 3 is around targeting the right people and making kind of talent acquisition a strategic strength. So around kind of the AI tech, there was an interesting article a couple of years ago that was actually Dunkin' Donuts. And AI, it's glamorous. For some people it's exciting, for some people it's terrifying. And so what they found was, rather than like asking how can we change this, make this better for you, to people in the stores, for instance, right, who might not know the solution to their challenges, they just ask the question, what do you not like about your job? And so we've kind of adopted that in our team and really across our teams. And every quarter we just ask, what do you not like? What's hard? What's challenging? And we say you don't have to know what the solution is, but we kind of put it out there. And one, it's, I think, helpful for people to be able to show some vulnerability and have a company that's asking those questions. But then 2, we really, we put project plans to how do we make this better. And so sometimes that's kind of a glamorous technology solution. Sometimes it's just making the process a little bit better. But I think that's one thing that if you can make people's jobs suck a little bit less, that can help, right? Much less have them help be part of the solution, right? That's a really positive thing. On the benefits thing, there's not a one-size-fits-all. So we talk a lot here about having a total reward strategy and really looking at the pie as a whole, because as all you finance people know, HR will come with a great idea, and incrementally they all sound great, and nobody's ever going to turn down something free, right? But you really have to look at it in a total reward strategy, because what's important to one person might not be important to another, right? Not everybody in your company is taking healthcare benefits. So if you make the benefits super rich, well, other people might feel like they're being left behind a little bit. So it's really having a total strategy around that. And then the third one is around that talent acquisition process, and having people like John here is a huge benefit for us. Because if you're just putting it on people to, on top of their day jobs, go out and recruit talent, it's going to be tough, right? And what we've found, we actually use even though it's a kind of core competency of Salo, and something we place people in, we've got specific roles that we hire high volumes of, and we actually rely on outside partners to help us with that, because it is, at this point especially, it's a very data-driven thing, and if you sit down for 15 minutes with John, your mind will be blown on LinkedIn and how scientific the approach is. So lots of different things, not a one-size-fits-all, but those are kind of the 3 things that we tend to focus on.
All right, perfect. All right, John, question for you. At the core of being a people-first company is purpose. Being crystal clear on your company's purpose and how each role drives to it is key. How does it support retention?
So when I think of purpose, making meaningful work for people, and I think about just our overall mission and values, I would say this organization runs itself by its values and its purpose more than any other organization. So again, for all of you in the room, if you think about, hopefully you can speak to your values. I know that we can hear that. I have worked for other organizations where when, what are your core values, and a lot of people would stumble and struggle. We don't do that here. And I think that's part of the magic of how retention and recruiting tie into sort of your perception of yourself. And so I would say a couple of ways that we do this within the organization. So you asked maybe what's an example of how you tie your values into every day and how you recruit and how you retain. And I would say it's part of our performance review process. It's part of our engagement survey. Like, we evaluate ourselves, our managers, and our teams by the values. When we have our anniversaries, we talk about the values. Everything we do, every meeting, we ground ourselves in before we even start the conversation as a team. We had a leadership meeting yesterday, and Adam Sprecher, I'm sure many of you know him, he's our chief growth officer here. He almost flipped through the slide that showed our purpose, mission, and values, which we've all seen 1,000 times, and he's like, whoa, go back, I'm not flipping through that. We're going to ground ourselves like we do in every meeting about what we're doing and why we're here and what's important. Guess what? That comes out in our recruiting process organically, naturally. Everyone on our team in a recruiting space knows exactly what that talk track is. It's not forced because they feel it every day. It's such an easy sell when I do this job. People are like, well, you should be in sales. I'm like, I am in sales. I'm just selling a culture and an organization that I think most of you would love to work for. It's an easy sell, but it all comes through in the values, which show up, again, from Lisa to Dave on down, all the way down to me, and then the rest of the team. Everybody has sort of a vested interest in hiring correctly, too. That's the other thing we talked about. I think part of the reason for retention, or good retention, is we hire really smart, and we take our time, and we align to the values. It's funny, we'll have someone, this guy is perfect. He checks every box, but I don't feel an alignment to a lot of the values, and here's why I mean that, and this was an example where I felt something was a little bit off. We'll pass, and we do that. So those are just ways that you can and should, I think, align your company values, the purpose, the meaningful work that you guys do. You're thinking about that in every hiring decision that you make, every retention strategy you implement. That should be part of what you're thinking about.
Great. Thank you, John. All right, let's kind of switch gears to recruitment. We talked about retention, recruitment strategy. So this year we're seeing a lot about hiring for soft skills, than for hiring for skills that require a certain title. So I guess, what does this mean to you? And do you think there is a better approach to recruit, or do you think it's a better approach to recruitment, both generally and for finance roles? And let's start with Claire.
Definitely. Have some thoughts on this one. So, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier too, about making connection with the organization and other people and onboarding retention. I think in finance, similar to other roles and in infrastructure, part of the organization, our leaders, and I'll say leaders meaning hiring managers, are looking for, do they have the tactical skills? Can they do cash? Can they do general ledger, those types of things? And they're very, very good at asking those questions to find out if they have the skills. And I'll ask you, how many of you do hiring manager training around behavior-based interviewing? Just show of hands. Okay. So coming out of, this is something that's been around for a while, the STAR approach, the DAP approach, things like that. Hiring managers really need more education and training and practice, internal practice of interviewing for soft skills. Tell me about a time. It's not always about the results, it's about how you approached it. Tell me about a time you had to work with a teammate where conflict arose, right? And so then you start listening and leaning in on what are those soft skills. And what you're also listening for is, are they going to be able to collaborate? Are they going to be able to work in a hybrid environment? Are they going to reach out to people when they hit a brick wall? Or are they just going to keep working on their spreadsheets, right? And I know that sounds bad, but I'm just trying to keep it simple and real. But I think investing in your interview and selection training is critical to the retention of your talent. Recruitment, yes. Retention, definitely. Because if you're not seeing those soft skills, if they're not able to communicate, collaborate, through the use of technology with the use of AI, but it's still people first. The work gets done by people. That's where you really need to focus. And it seems like a big investment, time and money to do that, allowing people to go to 3 hours of behavior-based interview training and doing some role plays and whatnot. It will pay off for you. Time and time again, it will pay off for you.
Can I say something to this real quick?
Yeah.
I have a ton of energy and excitement and passion about this question. So I would say the question is soft skills interviewing good, better than skills-based? I think it is 100%. So I'm an old school HR guy I like to think I had progressive ideas back in the day, and I was always the big guy who said, hey, we don't have to worry about college degree or any of that. We just need certain soft skills for this individual because we're hiring for upside and potential sometimes, and not just what can you do for me on day one. This is all my personal opinion. I cannot back this up with empirical, analytical evidence, but I will tell you what I think, having been in the trenches for a long time. I push this in our teams. I know HR, business unit, and finance are different, but I've been a big believer in let's not worry about whether this person has a degree or not. And on the HR side, I know that has been a requirement on the finance side before. I pushed back on finance before on that because I feel like there's just a lot of what an individual brings to the table that has nothing to do with their degree. I'd also say that more and more people are choosing not to go get a 4-year degree. You've probably seen a lot of the statistics. Enrollment in colleges are going way down. People are just thinking about different ways that they want to get involved. So I just think as we're sitting in this room and we're getting more thoughtful and progressive about how we're trying to bring new talent into our organization, I would challenge your recruiting teams or your hiring managers, or if you're one yourself, to think about what is it that you really need on your team to make sure you're ensuring success. Of course, in your fields, there's technical things like Claire mentioned. I don't understand any of it, but I know there's stuff you need to do to be successful. But I also think people are smart. They can be taught, and a lot of times they're bringing leadership or other things down the road that are going to be more important. And I know that you typically want to hire someone for about 2 years, and you hope you can hang on to them for 2 years. These days, I realize that's a thing. But I think if you do a lot of things we're talking about, you can keep people longer than that, keep them engaged, keep them interested. At Target, when I was there, I'm sure, Claire, when you were there too, they had a thing where it was almost like a rotational program, so they would move you into different areas, 18 months on the nose. And I remember specifically, and I'm an HR guy, I was in generalist work, and they said, hey, we're going to switch you to comp. And I'm like, I have never done that in my life. And they're like, it's cool, you're smart, we'll teach you, it'll be easy, we'll get you onboarded, and you can do something different. Best experience, of course, I went into it all in. Like, I'm going to learn everything I can, I'm going to eat it up, and I did, and it was great, and I had that opportunity. So many companies like the idea of not putting a job description next to a resume and checking each of the bullet points freaks them out. Like, don't think like that, because you're going to be missing out on awesome talent. So it's something else I wanted to add to that conversation.
Dave, do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I think just kind of building on what these two both said, it's really less about the credentials, but I think you can look into how they got those credentials and what are some of those soft skills that go into that, because ultimately the number one thing you want is somebody who's going to be a learner and who has curiosity, right? Because like I think about probably our most kind of tactical, process-oriented job here is in my team is our AR, AP person, and that person's job from 4 years ago when she started to now is completely different, right? And it was because she was willing to learn, was willing to kind of help change what that job looked like, that it's completely unrecognizable to what it was. And so that, I think, is just a key thing. It kind of goes back to what I was saying before about making things better, introducing technology and whatnot. As you're thinking about your teams, that means that kind of being the process expert, right, is less important, and it's really about understanding the numbers, having curiosity around the numbers, continuing to improve and all that kind of thing. So I think that's important. And then the other thing is just, we are working differently now, a lot more remote, so those soft skills become very important, right? Can the person can they kind of hold themselves accountable, be self-starters? And then on top of that, like a lot of times you almost have the opposite where you need to pull them back, right? Because you don't want them to burn out. So that's what I would add to that.
If I could say 2 things that you would hire for as a hiring manager today, you walk away with anything, my opinion. Learning agility and positive energy. If you have those two things in a candidate alone, that person, in my mind, probably make it to the second round at least. Again, positive energy, super simple, matters a ton. It's way more important than a lot of other stuff, in my opinion. And then learning agility, exactly what Dave just spoke of. We call it learning agility, like the ability to learn something new quickly, using your resources, getting up to speed fast, and understanding as quickly as possible, and then seeking out the next opportunity to learn something new quickly. Those two things, you're good.
John, how do you interview for that? Right, because everybody's going to say, I'm a fast learner. Right? So how do you dig through that?
Yeah, a lot of it is what Claire just talked about. You can either internally or through other services like Corn Ferry, not that I'm plugging them, get very detailed assessment or behavioral-based questions to get exactly what they're looking for. We make our folks give really detailed examples over the course of many interviews in order for us to really feel good about the concept of learning agility. So you can get at it, you just have to be thoughtful. Once you know it and define it, if that's what you believe your organization needs, then I would certainly look internally, like a person with a seasoned HR professional, like Claire probably knows some examples, but others outside of your organization. You can absolutely prepare and create questions that will get at this behavior.
All right, I just want to make sure we have enough time for questions and respect the end of the session here. One last question for the panel, and maybe just one of you can take it if you're really passionate about it. So we talked about the uncertainties of the economy, not knowing when it comes to the economy can be really risky, really just ambiguous, right? Talent mobility and having a diverse approach to staffing can offer more flexibility in tough markets, such as the one that we're currently in. Can you share more about how this strategy can help companies navigate and get through the ambiguity?
You go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. A little bit tying back to what we talked about earlier, finding the right talent in the location, not making them move type of a thing. There is also part of the strategy that says, do you know where the talent is that you need? Is it just here in the metro area, or through the use of market intelligence and partnerships and whatnot? You may be able to fill roles in Austin, Texas, or Chicago, if you don't require them to have butts and seats. And really understanding the market data and the level of skill sets that are available in that market will help you immensely. And that goes to talent mobility as well. If you have a current employee who is facing what a lot of employees are facing now, is dealing with aging parents, and that employee, for instance, needs to move to Charlotte, North Carolina, rather than saying no right away, ask them what will it take for us to have a successful relationship for you to work remotely from Charlotte, North Carolina. You're retaining talent, you're leaning in on a little bit of strategy. It certainly helps with your recruitment and retention. I think part of the ambiguity of everything is, none of us have a crystal ball. And you've probably got a really solid business plan, but how many of you have a talent plan? I like to call it a talent disaster plan, because everybody has disaster recovery plans, but do you have a talent recovery plan? That's part of taming the ambiguity, is what is your chessboard going to look like, and how can you move people internally, laterally. Some employees want to take a step backwards for a short period of time, and that might propel them forward in a couple of years. But it really comes down to listening to your employees and what they're asking for.
Perfect. All right. Well, those are all the questions that I have for today. Maybe in 30 seconds or less. Any final thoughts from John, Claire, Dave?
Yeah, 30 seconds. I would just say take care of your people would be the only thing I would leave you with. Sounds super simple, but you'd be surprised at how many people do not do that. I wrote it down on this piece of paper, take care of your people, in bold and underlined it. It's something we always do. It's something that everybody should always do. But if you're not thinking about it as a hiring manager and making sure that you're taking care of your people the way they need and want to be taken care of, you're going to you're going to lose that person, and then you're stuck in a recruiting and retention cycle that's never going to end. So Again, it's super simple, but if you're not taking the time on a daily basis, in your head think, am I taking care of my people? And you can't answer that quickly with a nod of the head, then you got to change what you're doing.
I would just say, given the kind of current environment and, potential for a recession, I was kind of reminded of something that a panelist at the industry conference that I was at this spring, there was a leader of a large industrial staffing company, right? So those tend to be the companies that are going to get hit the hardest during a recession. And he said that their strategy is they double down during a recession. They go long on talent during a recession. And it kind of made me think of the Warren Buffett quote of be greedy when others are fearful and be fearful when others are greedy. If you can if you can make it, if your P&L will allow it, keep your people, hire new people, do whatever you can, because you'll just be stronger when we get out of this.
I'll just add from a finance lens and being in HR, we may hear, what's the cost of that? We can't afford that. And I would ask, the next time that comes up in your organization, ask, what's the cost benefit? What's the benefit? And when will we see the results of that? The cost may be worth it. The cost recovery on something. Writing thank you notes is a very small cost. It can be done very quickly, but the benefit of that goes so far. You're connecting with your employees differently. So.
Can I just add one more? Sorry, Claire. One more. I know this is totally terrible. Dave just said something and it made me want to give one last closing remark here. Pipeline. Guys, Dave said, well, when it's, you should be ramping up at certain times when others are ramping down. What if you just ramped up all the time? So that would be my argument. Always be ramping up your talent. Always be pipelining. The last thing you want to do is have a position as either the hiring manager or working with TA. And it's like, okay, well, we just need a staff accountant, and let's just ram a staff accountant in there and then be done with it and then not think about it until our next hire. Like, that's a huge mistake. We constantly are pipelining talent, having organic conversations. And then you have to take the time to continue to nurture that relationship. I know it's hard and time consuming, but everything Claire's been saying, what is the cost of not doing that? You should just always be doing that. So instead of ramping up your recruiting efforts at certain points, always ramp it up. Always. No matter what. The market doesn't matter.
So we have a couple minutes here. George?
First off, thanks for your remarks this morning. Really appreciate it. So obviously Salem just went through a major change with the acquisition by Korn Ferry. So if you think about tips for successful recruitment retention strategies, a lot of companies in the room are probably going through M&A or thinking about M&A or just went through an M&A or they've got target companies that they're looking at. Talk to us a little bit from that lens about what folks in the room should be thinking in terms of how it impacts recruitment and retention strategies from that perspective.
Take that one.
You guys want to start?
So this one's kind of near and dear to my heart too, of having been in the position of divesting of companies, acquiring, merger acquisition. There's a little bit of a difference there. From an HR perspective, HR is not something that is really forefront during due diligence to the extent that you can, other than what's the cost of SG&A for those employees. And at the point of your due diligence, make sure that your HR team is part of the strategy. And to the extent that you can identify what skill sets of talent are in the company that you're going to be merging with, both soft skills and hard skills, right? There is a lot of times we miss, we don't need that person anymore, but really that person might have been the indirect leader who held that whole team together. And then after they go, everybody goes with them, right? Another big piece of it is communicate what you can and be open about, we're working on this, but we can't communicate, right? Lack of communication, people make stories up in their head, and the moment they get wind of something happening, and trust me, they know, they follow, right? If they don't hear from their leadership during this time frame, even without an M&A, but communicate, share with them to the extent that you can and be open about it. They will start looking for a job. They will talk to people and say, I don't know where we're going. How long is this going to be like this? And somebody like John will call and say, how's it going over there? You've been thinking about making a move? That's our strategy.
So that's a great question, George.
That is.
Thank you for that. So we're at time. Just want to say thank you to our panelists for your great insights. Thank you to all of you for your engagement and your questions, and hope you can stick around for the other sessions this morning.
Thank you very much, Salo. You guys were great. Thank you so much. Yep. Gang, the good news is we're going to run through 4 presentations this morning. The bad news is that gives you about 8 minutes to do whatever you do between presentations. So